Okay, opposite colour bishops, the king blockades the passed pawn. If you've got opposite coloured bishops, then the attacking side needs to have something pretty major going for them, just because of the drawing tendencies of opposite coloured bishop endgames. And here we have something pretty major going for us as white, which is this passed pawn. And we can see the king, the defending side's king blockades that passed pawn. Dvoretsky talks about two defensive systems. The first one is the best defensive system, where the king blockades the passed pawn. And the other one, which I'll do another video on, is where the bishop blockades the passed pawn. Now, if the king blockades the passed pawn, then, we can't shift that king. It's just quite happy to stay there. It's up to the defending side's bishop to then defend the pawns on the other side of the board and make sure that the attacking side doesn't create another passed pawn. So if the king blockades the passed pawn as the attacking side, the only way you're going to win it is to create another passed pawn on the other side of the board, and that's usually going to be good enough to win. Now, in opposite colour bishop endgames, positional pawn sacrifices, that creation of that second passed pawn, it might well involve giving your opponent passed pawns as well, but again, due to the nature of opposite colour bishops, if those passed pawns aren't dangerous, like if this bishop here can contain whatever passed pawns of black we're going to create and stay on this diagonal, protecting b6, the principle of one diagonal, then white's got very good winning chances. So that's the plan. The attacking side's always got to try and create a second passed pawn on the other side of the board. So pause the video and have a go as white at trying to do that. Can you create that second passed pawn on the other side of the board? And the only move that makes any sense at all to try and achieve this is f5. That's the opening move. Sadly for white, black's got a move here where the draw is just so obvious. It's not an obvious move at first to see. It's not the first thing you'd think of, but once you've seen it and you just sort of dot the I's and cross the T's, it's such a clear draw. It's so clear there's nothing really else to discuss there. This pawn, however you do the swapping, is going to get swapped for that one. And you can see that's just a draw. White's not going to create a passed pawn after that in a million years. But even taking the pawn on f5 is still a draw. White takes back. But black's just made their life a bit more difficult, like bishop d3 on the previous move. Pretty obvious draw. And now black has only one drawing move in this position. We've got to keep defending this pawn if it's attacked, and we've got to be ready to defend this pawn if it's attacked. So it's maybe like a bit of to and froing defending those pawns, and white can't attack both of them at once. So you might get complacent and just play any old move, because at the moment white's not attacking either of them. You think, well, if he attacks my h5 pawn, I'll play bishop e2, and if he attacks my f7 pawn, I'll play bishop c4. What's the problem? But you have to do it on this diagonal. We'll see why. So bishop e6 check is just a draw. We might see king g5, bishop g4, king to f6, bishop back to e6. You might be wondering, well, why can't white in this position play king h4 to get this h3 move in? They can. Black will just pass h3 and bishop e6. And what white wants to do here is, well, they want to play g4, and when you take on g4, they want to play this, but they can't because their king's in the way. And they can't move their king because it's just a swapping this pawn for this pawn. So that's why it was very important to have the bishop on that diagonal as you sort of defended f7 and h5 as they sort of alternately got attacked. So f5, bishop d3, clear draw, g takes f5, still a draw, but you have to, in this position as black, play bishop e6. Let's look at what happens if black just sort of casually plays a nothing move. just sort of saying, you're not doing anything. I'm just going to keep defending my pawns. So king g5, bishop e2. White's got two winning moves here, but one of them isn't really a winning move. Okay, so one of them's king f6, bishop c4, and now White's only winning move from here is to go back where they came from. King g5, bishop e2, and then you get another go. Okay, but in this position here, if White says, well, it doesn't really matter when I play h3, so I'll just play it here, they're going to get a nasty surprise. This is pawned in the crosshairs. Bishop f1. I mean, that's clearly a draw, h4, because we'll just bring our bishop back to this diagonal, put our king on b7, and then just do nothing. We'll just move our bishop back and forth all day. So White has to try something like g4. And Black's drawing move here is h4. We might see g5, takes, bishop f5. We just sack the bishop for that pawn. It's not a problem, because White's bishop's overworked. And we can swap our h-pawn for the b-pawn. We can use our h-pawn to get the draw, to win Black's b-pawn. So White can't play h3 whilst their king hasn't got control of h4. That's not going to work. So f5, bishop d3, clear draw. G takes f5, not a draw. Sorry, still a draw. But king takes f5. Black now has only one drawing move, which is bishop e6. And if they get sloppy and play king c6, attack the h-pawn, defend it, and now the king has got control of h4. So don't mess around going to f6. This is where White should play h3. And now, well, first of all, what happens if White attacks the h-pawn? Because that's what we saw before, pawns in the crosshairs. White can play g4. This time h4 doesn't work. The White king just takes it. Bishop takes h3 will be met by taking the h-pawn. That looks like a fairly clear win. And h takes g4, h4. Notice that, you know, Black's got two passed pawns of their own, but the White bishop's going to control them. Principle of one diagonal. And this is the pants, isn't it? That's the pants against this bishop. Bishops don't cope very well with pants. They just can't handle pants. So that's if bishop to f1. But what if Black just says, well, all right, I'll just leave my bishop controlling g4. I'll just play a nothing move. I'll play a waiting move. G4 is the winning idea. I don't know why White played bishop d4, but I don't suppose it particularly matters. King back to c6, g4. Takes h4. And we've got the one diagonal thing going on again. The White king can come back and attack the g-pawn. Black can try and set up a blockade here, which is inventive. Bishop back to g6, king g4, king b7, h5, king h7. And yeah, Black's got a bit of a blockade going on here. You're thinking, how are you going to get your king in? You know, the Black king can come here and guard that square. There's just no way in for the White king. And you can never take this pawn because the b pawn just falls. And then that's obviously a draw. We just sack our bishop for the h pawn. But White's winning plan's just very easy from here. You know, Black's got what looks like a great blockade. We just bring our king to a5. Sure, Black can stop us coming to b5 and c5. I mean, they could even come this way and stop us coming to a5, but they can't stop us then coming in this way. We just need to find a square where we defend the b6 pawn. And as soon as we've defended b6, we're attacking f6. So that forces the Black pawn forward to f5, and then the White king simply returns to the king side and comes in here. Notice that this pawn running down the board just achieves nothing because we've always got control of the f2 square. This bishop's going to get lost for this pawn. White's then going to round up the f pawn, and it's just over. So that would be the end of that. So this position is a draw, but king blockades the passed pawn. White's best winning try is to kind of try and create that second passed pawn on the king side, which, if Black's a bit sloppy, they can do. The king c6 is a losing move. and we do create that second passed pawn on the king side, like that variation, for example. Right, next. This is a game from 1955. It's Kotov versus Botvinnik. It's black to play. Here's your passed pawn. We've actually got a king threatening to take it at the moment, but assuming it's defended in a sec. This king, I mean, it's not blockading it, but it's containing it. This king's sort of out the game over here dealing with this passed pawn. But that's not good enough unless black can create a second passed pawn. Black to play, pause the video. What would you do? So there's a couple of winning moves here that sort of have to be played one after the other, and in fact the order of them isn't important. But what happens if black just does something like comes and attacks the h pawn? First of all, what happens? That's a pretty crucial pawn, that h pawn. This h pawn's going to be, in conjunction with this one. That's going to be very hard for white to deal with. That's going to be a winning combination. So white defends the h pawn. Great. Black can come back and attack the e pawn. Now this actually happened in the game, and white then returned the bishop to c5, getting back to the original position, and then Botvinnik tried again and found the winning move. Apparently that's how the game went. Well, the game definitely reached this position, and Kotov played the losing bishop c5, and Botvinnik did find the winning attack after that. But this is actually a draw, this particular position, because white should just play king d2. And we might see pushing the b pawn, and we'll see a swap of the b pawn for the e3 and the f4 pawns. But this is just a draw now. There's just nothing that black can do. I mean, they can stop the white king coming to d4, but they can't stop the white king coming to d4 and d2. And the white king's just going to sit quite happily on one of those two squares and move their bishop around all day between d8 and g5. So that's a fairly clear draw. So what did Botvinnik find in this position? Well, absolutely brilliant. g5. How about that? I love these moves where, pawn moves like that. They're so cool, aren't they? Because that's attacked twice and defended no times. It's almost like I dare you. It's one of those, isn't it? I dare you to play that. These moves just aren't on our radar. I guess put them on your radar. It's reasonably obvious suicide to take with the h pawn, making this passed straight away. In fact, black just pushes it. h4. We might see f5, just to get our bishop on the covering of the h2 square. That pawn's gone, and there it is as the bishop defending the h2 square. But this is gone. This bishop can quite happily sit on that diagonal where the g5 pawn is useless. This king's going to come to g2. The bishop's going to be lost for this pawn. It's a very easy win for black. So taking with the h pawn, suicide. So Kotov took with the f pawn. The next move is pretty obvious. I mean, the last two moves could have been played in either order. G5 is important, and then you've got to defend your if you don't defend your b pawn, you have no passed pawn. It's just obviously a draw. White's got a couple of choices here. The game continuation was to take with the pawn, and black's got to be careful here. I mean, the whole point of this breakthrough by forcing this is that the white bishop can no longer defend the h pawn. So we see king g3. This variation is quite instructive. I've forgotten to put it in actually, but sort of the bishop e7, king takes h4. You think, aha, check. You think, all right, fine. I'll just come back to g3. How about this for the principle of one diagonal? Okay, both these pawns are completely useless, whilst these two pawns are the pants. How about that? So that's that variation. The reason king g3 is important, by the way, is that if black plays king g4, they've just messed it up. If Botvinnik play king g4, he's just messed it up, because we see this d5, bishop takes, bishop back to f2. Oops. And now that's just a draw. So yeah, you got to play king g3 and not king g4 to cover the f2 square. So instead of bishop e7, maybe we'll see bishop a3, just sort of freeing up the king, so the b2 square is guarded. King takes h4, and the king could come across, nab the g pawn, king e4, h4, king f3. This is how the game went. Check, king f2, king f4, and white resigned. You know, they're just not coping with this. I mean, that's 2 passed pawns, 5 files apart. We did all the videos on connected, 1 file apart, 2 files apart, 3 or more files apart, and yeah, anything more than 3 files apart was just a win. And the only difference here is that this pawn here is on the board, but it's obviously just completely useless. That was with the pawn takes. We could see bishop takes. It doesn't change much, to be honest. King g3 again. Is king g4? No, king g4 is possible that time because e4 doesn't arrive with tempo like the d5 did a minute ago. So king g4 would also be fine. King g3, g6, principle of one diagonal again. That g6 pawn's just going to do nothing for white. King back to h3. I wonder why I went to h3. Worried I missed a subtlety there. And something. What's wrong with king g3? Nothing. It's absolutely fine. King h3, bishop f6, king e2, king. How about that? King g2, and this bishop's overworked. It's a nice little finish, isn't it? Again, these 2 pawns completely useless because of the principle of one diagonal. The black bishop can contain both those pawns whilst defending the b3 pawn at the same time. Pretty impressive stuff. So yeah, back in that position, it's the creation of a passed pawn on the other side of the board that's going to win. It's not the number of pawns in an opposite colour bishop endgame. It's the number of quality pawns, number of passed pawns, basically. Right, next, this is white to play. I mean, you can pause the video and have a go at it if you like. What would you do here next as white? Now, Dvoretsky has this in his tragi-comedies section, which I think's extremely harsh. Extremely harsh. I mean, I've been through it, and I think it's instructive, and it's good to understand why we have to play the move we play as the very first move. But even after seeing it, sort of the reasoning behind playing this first move, I get, but I could also see the reasoning behind not playing this first move, and I personally would say it was very difficult to understand or see in advance why this first move needs playing, you know, here. Because we know the way chess works. Chess doesn't follow rules all the time. That's what's so brilliant about it, isn't it? There's always an exception to the rule, and which is why we can't just sort of blindly follow rules. And, you know, something we've seen in the very first video of general principles of opposite colour bishops was that we can see our own pawns get in the way sometimes. That very first position, it was, and that one to me was clear. Our own pawns getting in the way of our own defence. Let's get rid of it. Pawns aren't actually particularly useful to us in opposite colour bishop endgames. If they're not doing anything, then they're just getting in our way. Get rid of them. The pawn we have to get rid of here is the c5 pawn, because it's getting in the way. And it's getting in the way of a defence down this diagonal. And I'm like, wow. I think good luck seeing that. Give this position to the strongest chess player you know, and see if they can identify from here that this pawn's going to get in the way later on of a defence down this diagonal. And then you might think, yeah, but it'll probably get in the way of something. We have no reason not to keep it. It might get in the way, so just the sort of the cautionary principle. Let's just get rid of it. It's just like, well, no, I don't subscribe to that either, because there are some situations where, in fact, we've just seen one in one of the opening positions where having that extra pawn means that we can get rid of it to distract a bishop that we desperately need distracting. Like, imagine a situation where the black bishop is on b7 defending a black pawn on f3 and our pawn's on c7, and everything else is gone and the black king's about to make its way back to defense of the f3 pawn. Wouldn't it be nice to play c8 equals queen to pick up the f3 pawn? This is a passed pawn. This could be useful to us later on. I mean, sure, if it's going to get in the way of a crucial defence on this diagonal, get rid of it. Absolutely. I just don't think I have the ability to clearly see that that's about to get in our way, that pawn. All I can do is commit the ideas to my chess playing memory ability, whatever. So like, oh yeah, I get it. In opposite colour bishops, sometimes we need to get rid of pawns because they're getting in our way. It's not the number of pawns, it's the number of quality pawns. I get that. And other times we sort of need to use pawns to overwork the other side's bishops. We can use them to win other. They're two conflicting principles that you'd have to really analyse deeply to understand why the former principle is this sort of the overriding thing here. I mean, let's go through it and see, but I think it's very harsh that it ends up in the tragicomedy section. So bishop d8 is what was played. It's a losing move, although it was a sealed move and the players agreed a draw without even coming back to the position. We're talking players that had seconds, other GMs or whatever. So I guess even harsher that it ends up in a tragicomedy section. But black can now win this by defending the pawn that needed jettisoning. We had to get rid of this pawn because it's about to interfere in a crucial defence down this diagonal. And we didn't. Oops. What a mistake to make. And that bishop on c6 has blocked it. So let's see how it goes on from here. Bishop c7, pawns in the crosshairs, very good technique. Force that pawn to move. That's a good start. And bishop back to d8. Crucial to all of this, by the way, is that this a pawn's dropping. White can't defend that a pawn. And to be fair to Dvoretsky, the players that played this game in their analysis just didn't even pick up on that idea, which was odd. Like, why can't black at least go and win that pawn? And then they've got the a5 threat in the air. I mean, the idea is that we'll win the a3 pawn, and then we'll play a5 whilst we're attacking the g-pawn. So if our king's attacking the g-pawn, if the bishop takes a5, king can take g5. If the pawn takes a5, then we've got our second pass pawn. That's the idea. It's like, okay, fine, I get all that. So the black king comes over and just wins the a-pawn. And white just times it, so the king's on e3, pretty good square to be on, and plays bishop a5 on the winning of the a3 pawn. Now there's a bit of messing about that needs doing here. It's sort of a minor point really to everything else that's going on, but black needs to do a bit of messing around to gain the opposition off the white king. So king a2, king d2, king b2, king c3. I'll leave you to investigate that if you want to, but there is a bit of messing about opposition to be done. But the point is it doesn't take that much messing around. You could sort of look at corresponding squares if you wanted to, but black can do that messing about to get the king back. As soon as black relinquishes the attack on the b4 pawn, the white bishop's free to move. And it's sort of difficult to see how black's making progress. Bishop d8, we're just defending everything. King f4. Oh, zugzwang. So it's the zugzwang at this point. If bishop takes check, king takes g5, and now black's got a very easy winning plan from here. The king's going to come to d3, and this g pawn is going to advance to g3 with check. If the bishop takes it, we've got the a5 idea, okay, which is going to create a second passed pawn on the b file. And if, when we brought our king to d3 and pushed the g pawn, if the king takes it, the black king can come to e2. Okay, and again, well, I think the white bishop can't even defend f2, can it, if the white king's on g3? So that's clearly one. But if it could somehow miraculously defend f2, we've still got the a5 pawn push, creating that second pass pawn on the b file. So back here, bishop c7 doesn't work. You think, all right, I'll just drop the king back to f1, and now we'd see king e3. And this is the bit we're in big trouble. Okay, if only our c5 pawn wasn't there, we could play bishop b6 check. I mean, bishop b6 is obviously completely useless here. So we might see bishop c7 instead. And I mean, black's got a choice of how they win this, to be honest. But just a5 straight away is fine. If the bishop takes, then yeah, the bishop can come to d5. There's no way that this bishop can now have any control over f2. That's actually checkmate in 5. This bishop's coming here with check, and this pawn's following on with check, and f1 queen. It's over. In fact, that will do, to be honest. But black doesn't have to play a5. Black could actually just still play something like bishop d5 here. You think, well, that's no good, because I'll come and I've got control of f2 now. So when you play bishop c4 check, I move my king up controlling f2. But you still create that second pass pawn. And yeah, and white's just dead. What they really wanted to do was, back in this position, they wanted to play bishop b6 check. And they can't. So I don't know how you watching this might feel about that now, but you know, can you see that now and see, oh yeah, well, that's the crucial diagonal. I mean, I'm in the position of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Back in this original position, we need that diagonal open. But the bit that I'm sort of a little bit stuck on, trying to make myself into a better chess player, is, could I really see far enough to, you know, see that as being important? Or could I ever see myself, I mean, do the top players get a feel for that sort of thing? Because top players sometimes get a feel for it, don't they? They just instinctively know that C pawn's going to get in their way. I can't see it. Like I say, find the best chess player you know and challenge them to find the only drawing move in this position, which is c6. I'll now go through it. So after c6, I mean, black obviously just takes that pawn. And we see a similar sort of thing to the moves we just saw, except that we now no longer have that pawn in our way, so that the black king comes and wins the a pawn. Pawns in the crosshairs, force this pawn forward. That's just good technique. Defend the b pawn, and again just do nothing until the black king relinquishes control of or an attack on the b4 square. That frees our bishop up. We see all the same sort of stuff, and yeah, the black king's made its way to f5, and then we defend g5. Okay, there's king f4, zugzwang. Okay. By the way, if a5 is played straight away, just to swap the g pawn for the a pawn, this isn't going to be a problem. King g3, that's just impenetrable. You know, it's just a complete fortress. We can leave our bishop on this diagonal, controlling the f2 square. And if white makes their way to attack the b pawn, then we just bring it back to defend the b pawn. Okay, there's no way black can black's king can defend f2 and attack b4 at the same time, so it's going to be fairly easy to sort out. So not pushing the a pawn, carrying on with the same idea, king f4, zugzwang. And this is where we played king f1 before, and the crucial point is that this time after king e3, bishop b6 check. And you can see that black's getting nowhere there. Our king's coming back to f2. So we might instead see a better try. Black can play bishop c4 check, king back to f2, still trying to pull us in zugzwang, various ideas. If bishop d3, white's got a little trick here. The f3 pawn is not defended. So we can see bishop c7 check. Either swapping that for that, or if king g4, just bring the bishop back to d8. Or indeed, we didn't even have to do that. Could have bishop b6, the engine was also saying, because we could have, again, we're just still threatening to swap the g pawn for the f pawn. So what if black thinks, okay, well, I'll defend the f pawn. Okay. Now we can play king g1. And after king e3, bishop b6 check. Finally, it is possible for black in a convoluted way, instead of having their bishop on e2 defending the pawn, and we play king e1, it is possible for them to eventually sort out bishop g2 defending the pawn. And then we want, so the king being on g1 corresponds to the bishop being on e2 defending the f pawn, and the king being on e1 would eventually correspond in the same way. Because the black king coming in is not a problem. If the black king comes into... the reason we need to be on g1 is because if the black bishop's on e2, we need to stop the black king coming to g2. And if the black bishop's on g2, we need to stop the black king coming to e2. Like the black bishop's in the way of the king coming to the square the bishop's on, so we just need to cover the other one. We don't want the black king basically getting to g2 or e2. I'll leave it up to you to decide what the final verdict for you is. For me, c6 is a very hard move to find, and great, I've got the ideas on board now. Opposite coloured bishops, I'm getting a feel for the pawns, their value. Sometimes they need to go. I'm not convinced that if you could arrange the same principle that I would get it next time. I think it'll be on my radar next time. I think I could say, oh, maybe I need to get rid of my c pawn here. But I think the desire to keep it just in case I need to use it to win this later on would probably win the day. I probably need to lose lots of games in opposite coloured bishop endgames where I don't jettison a pawn that needed jettisoning before I finally get it. So maybe in another 100 years or something, I can finally be a good chess player. Right, next. This is a game from 1975. It's actually Lebojevic versus Karpov. It's white to play. Pause the video if you like and decide what you do as white. I mean, white's a pawn down in this this position, so it's kind of a bit of a surprise as to what the game continuation was, because there's some fairly easy ways to draw this. I mean, this game really should just have ended in a draw. So for example, g5, if black pushes the f pawn, we could see f4, king d5, bishop g7. I mean, white's just getting nowhere there. Or we could see f takes g5, takes back, again push the f pawn. So g5 seemed like a very obvious way to draw it. It wasn't the only way to draw it. There's lots of drawing moves. I'm just looking down. I mean, all top 5 moves by the engine are still 0.0 or minus 0.1. h5, we might see g5, an attempt by the side with the extra pawn. That could have been an attempt by Karpov to win this, because when you're trying to win opposite colour bishop endgames, you want to put your pawns on the opposite colour to your own bishop, forcing your opponent's pawns onto the same colour as your bishop, that kind of idea. So there's still winning chances. Check, king back to e3, f5 perhaps, takes, and then h6. I mean, that's fairly drawn. But the game continuation, a bit of a surprise to see like a top player doing this. It wasn't quite clear why. King e4, maybe just what you could do anything. And it's instructive to see how Karpov proceeded from here. I mean, this is still just drawn. a4, h5, we saw takes, f5, king back to e3. Then Karpov starts bringing his king in. h6, king c4, still completely drawn, f4. I mean, these are good ideas, putting your pawn on the same colour as your own bishop if you're trying to defend. King b3, and this is where it goes wrong for white. Lebojevic had only one drawing move in this position, and it wasn't the one he played. So the b2 pawn, well, it needs defending, sort of. And Lebojevic played bishop g7. Black played king c2, and the important point was keeping the white king out. It's still very instructive what Karpov did from here. You know, because we're defending the b2 pawn. How's black going to make any progress whatsoever? And Karpov brought his bishop round to b3 in the endgame. Do not hurry. Take your time. He brought his bishop round to b3. White just carried on playing waiting moves, and then Karpov got on with moving the pawns forward. b5, c4. Bishop back to g7. b4. This was the breakthrough moment. So if white plays king d4, then c3. This is actually what happened in the game. Go back to that in a sec. And if white takes, then c3. There's a couple of nice variations here. B takes c3, bishop c4 is quite a nice one. How about that for a finish? That a pawn can't be stopped. We could also see bishop takes c3, and then a3, and and the bishop's gone. Bishop back to e5, a2. How about that? So we saw king d4, c3, takes, and yeah, white's bishop's gone, and it sort of just ended reasonably soon after that. I'm not sure why he's carrying on from there, to be honest, but yeah, that was then resigns. There's some other interesting variations to show. Bishop went to f8 there. What if white tried to prevent b4 by coming back to c3? Well, in this point, Karpov would have played takes and a3. Not too dissimilar to one of the other variations. If bishop back to g7 here, c4 is kind of transposed to the game. And finally, what about bishop e1? Well, then the king takes on b2. Takes, bishop takes, and the bishop's gone. Or it's gone eventually, anyway. That was a nice little move, by the way. Like that. Takes. You'd think king b1, right? Followed up by a1 equals queen. But no, king c2 is better, because white's now only got one move. They can't defend their bishop. They've got to move. It has to be bishop a1. So you gain a tempo there. It's interesting. Bishop back to c3. And then the calm bishop f7. That was necessary, actually. That was the only winning move. So yeah, brilliant winning plan, all revolving around that bishop b3 move. There's one other thing to say about this position, which where was it? It wasn't there, was it? Oh yeah, sorry. There's a couple of other things to say. If white tries sort of a pawn swap here, bishop c7, king takes b2, bishop takes b6, c4, check. We could have seen this, and yeah, that's sort of fairly clearly winning for black. But it was back in this position where Lebojevic had his last chance there. This is last chance saloon instead of bishop g7. There, sorry. What he needed to play here was king d2. Because if the bishop moves, then you can defend the pawn with the king. And crucially, you're not allowing the black king in. And then this is still a draw. Dvoretsky reckons, though doesn't know, that he didn't play it because he was worried about, or he didn't really want to have to calculate this. Just the bishop sack. But this is a draw. You know, if king takes a3, king c2, king b4, king b2. That's just sort of obviously drawn straight away. And if c4, threatening c3 of course, we'd see, or we could see bishop g7 check, c3, swapping of the pawns that way. And, well, actually white's winning that. But yeah, there was no reason to worry about the bishop sack. But all of it's a bit bizarre because back in the original position, you know, if you're the defending side, you're a pawn down. You know, unlike the previous position where I don't think I could have seen c6 in a million years. This one I'm sort of like, I feel a bit like I might be just being sort of complacent or just assuming I'm sort of a better chess player than I actually am, because I'm, you know, this guy playing white, Lebojevic, is sort of a top grandmaster, and good results against all the best players in the world, and it just strikes me like I don't really understand why he played the way he did. Like, he can't have been trying to win it, surely. He's a pawn down in an opposite colour bishop endgame against Karpov. Come on, you're not going to win that. So it just strikes me as odd that he didn't just play moves like putting his pawns on the same colour. I mean, it's just, what? I don't know. It's just bizarre. Why didn't he just do this? Yeah, like I say, you feel a bit of an idiot where you sort of end up not criticising, but thinking, oh yeah, they did that and I wouldn't have done that, and it's just like, well, hang on a minute, are you sure? Like, they're a pretty good player. Are you missing something? I feel a bit like that. Right, finally, black to play. Pause the video. How would you go about defending this? It's opposite colour bishops, but you're 2 pawns down. So white has 2 extra pawns, but this is kind of the important one. And remember, the best defensive system is where the king blockades the passed pawn and the bishop's left to make sure that no other passed pawns are created on the other side of the board. So in the actual game, black played this pretty well. King e6. We saw h5. Okay, this bishop's overworked. Bishop takes h5 would be a disaster. So keep moving the king across. h6, king g6, and the black king blockades the passed pawn. But then white's going to make progress. White's going to try and create a passed pawn on the other side of the board. I mean, obviously they've got to defend their h-pawn first of all. King h7. King b6. And now you could pause the video again if you liked and think about, right, what needs doing next? Like, how are you going to use your bishop to make sure that no passed pawn is created on the other side of the board? Because in the game, a losing move was played. And it's not too dissimilar to sort of the first position. In fact, it's an incredibly similar idea. Black could be thinking, right, well, I need to defend this pawn, so I'll defend that pawn when the white king's attacking it, and I'll defend the a4 square when the white king's on a5 threatening to play a4. But there's a third problem, which is that if the white king's on a5, white's not just threatening to play a4, they're also threatening to play d5 if you're not covering it. And that's going to create them their second pass pawn. So you kind of need to be doing the green arrows, switching between the two plans, depending on what white does. But you also need to be covering the d5 square at any given time. So bishop e4 was what was played in the game. It loses. King a5. I mean, what does black do? If they just do a nothing move, a4. Okay. In fact, this is what happened in the game. And there's white's second pass pawn. Okay. These two pass pawns, they are free file separating. We've seen that that's a win. Okay. Well, bishop and free file separating, it's bishop and rook's pawn, isn't it? So, in fact, does that matter, or is it always a win? Can't remember off the top of my head. There are some extreme situations, aren't there, where the bishop on one diagonal can contain them. But yeah, that's a win. What's the other choice that black has at this stage? They could come and defend a4, but then there's the d5 pawn push. So if we go back to this move, I'm sort of giving it away, really. We need to alternate between, defending c6 is important. Oh my god, I'll get the colours of the arrows right eventually. Defending c6 is important. Defending a4 is important. me learning to use my mouse a bit better is important. But you've got to control the d5 square. So it's pretty obvious. Bishop d5. King a5. Bishop b3. White can't make any progress at all. And we are going to alternate between defending the a4 square and the c6 pawn. And white can never play d5. Well, they can, but you just take it with the bishop. Yeah, so that's king blockades the pass pawn. The main way that the attacker's going to win is to create a second pass pawn on the other side of the board. It is the better defensive system for the defender to get the king behind the pass pawn, but you've got to really think about how the attacker could create the pass pawn, all the different ideas they've got, and we've seen at least two different positions here where if you're the defender, it was absolutely crucial to see all those different ideas and work out where do you want your bishop, which diagonal does it need to be on, to make sure that none of those plans come to fruition or are realised. Or yeah, I'm not very good at English. Yeah. Right, that's the end of king blockades the pass pawn. The other main defensive system is bishop blockades the pass pawn, which I will also do a video on.